We have a couple other committee members that couldn't make it. Unfortunately, they're doing listing agreements. Today we should have a really exciting, discussion about real estate, especially with interest rates changing and immigration laws changing, and also with kind of the trade war with China. I think 2019 is going to see a lot of change in the market, and we kind of have seen the real estate market soften a little bit. So we'll talk about that and see if that continues. We're going to start off, each presenter is going to have a chance to talk, and then we're going to go to questions that we're going to ask, and then the audience will have an opportunity to ask questions. So all three are going to come up. My first speaker is John Wu from Caldwell Banker, George Realty. He has tons of experience in commercial real estate and has certificates in Real Estate Business Institute, Certified Real Estate Broker and Manager, Certified International Property Specialist, Transnational Referral Certificate, Accredited Buyer Representative. That's enough? So John, come on up. And then we have Buddy Krug from HSBC. He's the Southern California VP Mortgage Area Sales Manager. He leads a team of premier mortgage consultants that specialize in both purchase and refinance relationships. His territory expands from Los Angeles, California through San Diego. At HSBC, he's able to help international and domestic clients and their real estate needs. And he drove down from Porter Ranch today with a bunch of traffic. And then we have Paul Chang from Paul Chang & Associates. He's an attorney focusing on immigration law, and he also counsels for employment, business, and real estate litigation. He has a BA from UCLA and attended Southwestern University School of Law, where he earned his JD degree. His mantra is changing the way immigrants are treated by society by winning millions in judgments and verdicts on behalf of abused individuals throughout California. So,
okay. Should I stand up and talk, or do you want me to sit down?
Either way, whatever you're comfortable.
All right. Mic's on. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good. So my name is Buddy Krug. Like mentioned before, I'm the area sales manager for SBC. So I help people with mortgages. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit more from an international standpoint about what we can do and what we can offer. Before I get into that, though, I want to explain myself a little bit. So I've been in mortgage since 2000 and really focused in on helping domestic and international customers. So what I'm seeing today in the LA area from a market outlook is I'm seeing a bit of a slowdown from the Asian countries. Seeing less foreign national buyers coming in from Hong Kong, what we've seen in the past. We're seeing an uptick in Mexican foreign nationals coming in and buying properties, and also Canadians. So, I mean, China still leads the way when you look, at the last couple of years of foreign nationals buying in the U.S. However, that number's trending down a little bit, and that has a lot to do with currency policies, the SAFE policy in China, and also values on the West Coast, right? So we're seeing a little bit of that move from people coming from the West Coast, maybe moving into Texas and Florida from China versus staying in Southern California. I mean, you've seen a huge uptick in Seattle and San Francisco, but you're starting to see people move in different areas. A little bit about my team. I manage a team of 10. Last year, we had a very strong year. My team of 10 produced $400 million in volume in loans last year. About $200 million of that was in international. So I often hear that there's a slowdown in the market, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there. So what we'd like to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about today, is maybe some things that you don't know, answer some questions for you guys around international lending for foreign nationals, and to see if I can help out in any way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Buddy. Now we'll have John put his 2 cents in.
Sure. How about let me sit down here? Make me easy. Well, yeah, it's not energetic enough because it's cloudy day, but thank you so much for having me here. First of all, I thought that the trade war will be ended by the time I came here, but it's not yet. And I would like to share some some of my experience about dealing with the international clients, but not only the buyer but seller too. In the past 2 decades that I think the National Association of Realtors has been actively exposing the power in the resource from overseas. They would like to get more connections, especially the business opportunities for the realtors members. First of all, I was born in Hong Kong. I'm John Wu, and I raised in Taiwan, and I stayed in Austria for 2 years, and I came to the United States for more than 23 years. So that's a little bit about my background. But I got my CIPS since 2004, which is 15 years ago. And when when Dave gave me some list that we should talk about something about the international real estate, that what association I belongs to that helped me to promote my listings or help me to grow my business internationally. Be honest to you that I belong to National Association of Realtors, and the CIPS is a great network and good channels to do the business if you want to approach the international clients. I will be talking about the cultural difference, the international real estate trend, and where the money going in the world right now, and also something you should do and something you should not do to your international client today. So I will be answer your question later, and I will share some. If you have any more ideas about, because it's kind of pressure for me, especially when my good friend Paul is here. He's a great speaker. So every time I speak to him, every time I team up with him, I am so big pressure today. But anyway, I'm so happy to be here, and I look forward to to get more information from Buddy and also Paul too. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. So last but not least, Paul, tell us a little bit about your background, what you do.
All right. So it's 10 minutes, right? All right. All right. Okay, so I wanted to thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I'm actually so excited to be with John. If you believe in reincarnation, I don't, but if there was, I'm going to be his girlfriend in the next life, because he is the nicest guy out there, and it's just so sweet, because typically nice guys, a lot of them don't necessarily have integrity, and our law firm is built on integrity and dignity, and that's just something that I always see in you. So thanks, man. It's just very, very sweet to always have him, because it kind of huh? Oh, stop. No, he always reminds me to be a better person. So, one of the things that I'm really excited about are immigrants. Our law firm, we do business, state, labor compliance, and in the business side, we work with a lot of immigrants, but we still have about 10 to 15% of our cases where we work with used individuals to try to recoup money for them in damages. So I'm part of the $10 million club, so my judgment was $14-15 million against a defrauded immigrant. And so I just want to share with you that there are many immigrants that are being defrauded here in America because they were lied to. But that's not the reason why I'm here. The reason why I'm here very quickly is to kind of give you an overview on immigration so you can kind of understand how it could be incorporated into your practice and to be able to see how we can be able to use it for 2019. So there's 2 types of category of immigration. One are non-immigrants. Non-immigrants. They come here for a short period of time. The second portion are immigrants, and what that means are people that come here, that stay here, and get their green card here, and eventually become U.S. citizens. Now, why is that important to you? It's important to you because when you work with your client, you're going to be working with 2 different types of clients. One type of clients are only going to be here for a period of time, and the second type of clients are going to be here with their goal of being here, and getting a green card, and getting their U.S. citizenship. Now, most of the non-immigrants, meaning that those that are here temporarily, they want to become immigrants. Why? Because America is the best. So, in terms of the non-immigrant category, you're going to be meeting people that are typically on B1, B2. B1, B2. And what that means is they come here for 6 months and they got to leave. They come back, typically in for 6 months, but they have to leave. If they come in too often, their stamp that they can be able to come in on, the time period gets shortened. So it can go from 6 months to 3 months. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. So I had a client, she came in on B1, B2. Her daughter is a U.S. citizen. She's from Hong Kong. But she was here so often that immigration finally said, you know what? Yes, you're technically able to come in for 6 months, but we're only going to give you 2 weeks. Now, why is that important to you? It's important to you because when you meet these clients, they're going to have a big question. Can I buy real estate in America? Because non-immigrants in other countries cannot buy property. And the answer is yes. It doesn't matter whether you're a non-immigrant or whether you're an immigrant, you can buy property in America. Now, the second question they have is, if I buy property in America, can I be able to get my status? Because particularly over in China, they're told that if they buy property in America, they get a green card. That is a lie. And that is a lie that's consistently being told to them. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that a lot of real estate agents and brokers, they almost need to feed into that lie because they feel that if they don't say the lie, then they're lying to the client because that's what they heard over in China and they're going to lose the case. Does that make any sense? So really you have to avoid that, because now what's ended up happening is that there are a lot of people that have been lied to and they're now hiring attorneys here in America to sue. And so a question people ask is, well, if I'm overseas, can I be able to sue? And the answer is yes. You don't need to be in America to sue. You can actually give your rights to a third party and allow the third party to sue. It's kind of like the same theory as how can if you owe money to a credit card company or to a bank, how can they give it to a debt collection company? It's the same theory, is that the debt collection company can be able to sue on behalf of the bank because they've given their rights over. Okay, so the next category, so you have B1, B2, you have student visas, so people that are here as students, they typically come here on a non-immigrant visa. Those are the big ones. And then for the immigrant category, what ends up happening is there's really only 2 ways in America for you to stay and get your green card and your U.S. citizenship. 1 is marriage, 2 is through work. 1 is marriage, 2 is through work. So it's very easy. If you get married to a U.S. citizen, you pretty much are going to get your green card and your U.S. citizenship if you're married to a U.S. citizen. Now under Trump, it's taken between 1 to 2 years before you take 6 months. So it's taking a long time. Are there people that have fraudulent marriages? The answer is yes. That does happen a lot with the Chinese community. You end up, a girl ends up marrying somebody that's 30 years older. A guy ends up marrying somebody that's 30 years older. Just this crazy stuff that occurs. But that does happen within the immigrant community. Is that something that you need to deal with? Maybe, because you could be in a situation where somebody has purchased a home from you, and suddenly they're getting investigated by immigration. It's not going to impact your license, but it is a situation that you do have to deal with. The other category that's going to give you work, it's very easy. It's just EB1 through EB5. So a lot of you have heard about EB5, but just let you know, EB5 is the 5th category, and there's EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, and EB5. Just let you know, because people always ask, is EB1 and EB2, are they really good? The answer is, I think EB1 through EB4 should be explored. I don't think it's explored enough. I think EB5, around 10 years ago, I was lecturing to a lot of attorneys, and I said I think a lot of Asian people in particular are going to get lied to. There's going to be a lot of fraud. And that's what ended up happening 10 years later. We have a lot of people, so I'm from Pasadena, but in the San Gabriel Valley community, a lot of attorneys being arrested, things of that nature. So there's been a lot of EB5 fraud. But EB1 through EB4 should really be looked at. I did want to say that I forgot to talk about for the non-immigrant category, you can look at what's called an L visa. I think an L visa is something that in my opinion, is the only way to expedite a decision. So an L visa is something that you really need to look at. So it is a non-immigrant category, but it allows you to stay up to, in many cases, up to 7 years, continue to renew. An L visa is something that I think you need to look into, because once you're an L visa, you can then apply for you can apply for what's called an EB1C, and it's something that allows people then to be able to use their L visa to convert to an immigrant category and then to be able to stay in America. So if you ask me what is currently the holy grail, what attorneys look at is they look at what's called L visas, conversion into an EB1C. And EB5s, I don't think are dead. I just don't think you guys need to be exploring that, because there are too many agents that have gotten sued in the EB5 context. So I would say you should really kind of take a hands-off approach, at least at this current time, for the EB5 context. Okay, so what did we learn? All right, because I'm saying a lot of things, I'm trying to summarize it. We learned that with people that come from any other country, they come in two main categories: non-immigrants, which are people that get to stay here for a short period of time, and then you have immigrants, meaning people that want to get a green card and U.S. citizen. You are able to convert from a non-immigrant to an immigrant category using two ways: marriage and work. And work is only 5 categories: EB1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is one category over here that I failed to speak on, but I think would really help you, which is the L visa. It's being heavily scrutinized under Trump, but it's still the best way to get a quick decision. It's called the L visa. It allows you to stay for many years in America. You can bring your family, you can be able to go to school. It's an L visa, but you got to go. Why? Because it's a non-immigrant category. Therefore, people on the L visa will convert over to EB1C so that they can be able to stay in America and be able to get their green card under an immigrant visa. Because if you're applying for an immigrant to basically get to stay, some of the categories that you're applying for, you can't apply for and stay in America. Why? Because you're under a non-immigrant category. So if they allow you to stay for 6 months, but the decision is 3 years from now, then technically you've overstayed by 2.5 years. So you have to leave the country. So the L visa allows you to stay in America for a long time under a non-immigrant category. And then you're applying for your EB1C. Does that make any sense? Yeah, so that's just something for you guys to think about. And I agree. I was saying this about 1.5 years ago, is that I feel that there's, America's reliance on Chinese money. It's bad news. It's bad news. It's not a good move. It's not just with bonds. It's not just with real estate. I could be able to tell you, this is just my opinion. John may have a different opinion, but there is, in my opinion, categorically a major collapse of prices across Southern California when there is a reliance on Chinese money. And so, while we try to stay not political, but the America First policy that's currently being viewed isn't that bad. Maybe expressed wrongly, but it's not a bad thing to put America first. I think that's one of the reasons why we've lost our way, is we've forgotten that America needs to come first. And so now we have this huge influx of money that we kind of allowed in, but we didn't really organize it, and now it's being pulled away and we're collapsing. So we have to remember, no matter what your politics are, we have to just remember America is the best place to be, and we have to put America first. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Paul. That was fascinating. There's more to come. We have a series of questions we're going to ask our speakers, and then once we get into it, we can have questions and answers, or questions for the audience. So please write them down and wait till we're done with the questions. So, Buddy, we'll start with you. What are the loan programs you offer to foreign nationals?
All right. So, is this mic on? Yes? No? All right. Thank you. So, foreign national programs. So, and very similar to what Paul was saying, we view our international options for our clients very similar to what he just spoke of. So when I'm talking about foreign national options, I'm talking about non-immigrants. So for a foreign national on a B1, B2, we're able to finance a property or finance a mortgage for them. And it's the same type of programs that we would use for domestic customers. We have a 5, 7, 10-year ARM. We have an IO option. We have a 15 and a 30-year fix for them. The big difference between international and domestic would be we look for a little bit more of a down payment when I'm dealing with a true foreign national customer, a B1, B2. You'll see some programs out there where it'll be 40 or 50% down. At HSBC, we actually offer a product where it's just 30% down. So big difference there. Most domestic customers are usually at 20% down payment. For our international buyers, true international buyers, we have a 30% down program. Now, when you jump into that L1 category or that new to country green card, we treat that just like a domestic customer where they're looking at as little as 20% down when we do a loan for them.
Is there interest rates different between the two loans?
There is, and this is something that you want to find a partner, a mortgage partner, because, we heard a little bit about people getting taken advantage of. A lot of times when people come over looking for financing, sometimes that money they go hard money, right? They go hard money. It's a short-term loan, maybe a year loan, 6-month loan with very high interest rates, a lot of fees associated with it. At HSBC, we're an international bank. We do business in 123 countries. This is what we do. So the way that we know how these clients pay us back, so we price risk based on that. So from an interest rate perspective, what you'll see is if a domestic loan today on a 30-year fix is 4%, our international loan would probably be about 4.25%. So that would be no points, no fees. Essentially, it's about a quarter higher than what our domestic price is. And that just has to do with risk. We're not getting a FICO score. So it's a little bit different of how we price it, but it's still very fair and extremely competitive versus some of the other banks or other institutions that do foreign national lending. But be careful with that. And that's why, we'll get into some more questions, but be careful with who you partner with so that you're putting your customer in the correct situations. Are we doing questions now?
Well, no, so I'm going to go through all the questions for everyone.
Okay.
And I'll rotate a little bit just to keep it spicy. So, John, we talked about CIPS and TRC as far as your experience. Are there any other special organizations or affiliations you belong to in order to promote your business? And if you want, you can talk a little bit about CIPS and TRC. On the global committee, most of us have our CIPS and TRC. They're interesting certifications. And typically at the association, we'll have a class annually where you can earn it. So it's something to look into. And we typically promote it, so look for that coming in August.
Okay, this time I have to stand up. This is why the pressure coming from. Okay, well, first of all, how many CIPS here? Do we have CIPS? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Well, this is a good numbers so far. But let me share something with you about not only the CIPS, but how to build up your relationship by participating in some association. As I mentioned earlier, that I'm more focusing on the NAR, the CIPS channel, because this is we have so many destination courses. We have TRC, we have CRB, we have CPM for the management, we have CCIM, we have CRS. But why CIPS? Because you are trying to approach your international resource and get more clients from there. But besides NAR, how many of you join the NAR Expo annually? Do you go NAR Expo in November? No? Yeah. Okay, thanks God. I sweat. Because this is a great opportunity that we can network with the real estate professionals from overseas, from all over the world. We are, NAR have, so far we have 66 cooperation associations, across the, overseas. But also we have, is this association an ambassador association to some country?
Yeah.
Which one?
I know for sure Australia.
Australia. So the PL, the president liaisons for Australia is still Steve Carter?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my good buddy too. But I mean, when you are thinking about approaching more clients overseas, are you only thinking about the clients, or you're also trying to teamwork with the real estate professionals overseas? Would that be a good channel for you to get a referral? Yes. 55% of my clients is from overseas, and 30% of them are referral from the agents in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. But why? Because this is why it's so important that you try to participate some of the association and you start networking with the people that you don't know, and they may have different background, different culture background with you. And have you heard about the Sister Cities Association in your local? No. I'm not so sure Torrance probably has a sister city is in Japan. And your neighbor city, Long Beach, has 5. They have Cambodia, China, Kenya, Japan, Russia. So, are you familiar with those countries? Okay. So, when we are talking about the sister cities, this is nothing really directly to do with the real estate yet. But what sister cities do? They are trying to exchange the program. The young professionals, maybe the student program, economic, and they would like to do the business too. So have you ever, if you want to approach more about the international business opportunity, that is another good channel. The Sister Cities Association, in your local city. If you're a part of them, you may have an opportunity to meet those people and to use your influence as a realtor and to promote, to share your experience, your knowledge about the real estate, buying real estate in the United States. And let me give you another example that I was the convener of the sister city for Temple City and Hualien County in Taiwan, and they have officially signed the MOU last August. So in MOU, they would like to enhance the relationship between two cities, on the student exchange, and also they would like to do some like the art, performance, cultural exchange too. But I'm a part of that, and I have an opportunity to meet the association leadership in Taiwan and tell them we would like to create more network opportunity with you. So this is a good beginning, right? When you don't really need to speak the language there, but you have a channel, then you find the right association and you have a somewhere that you can participate and share the information. You're not really doing business right away, but this is in direct feedback coming back pretty soon. So I would say the association that I have been participating in, that's a lot. I was 11 years ago I was the Chinese American Real Estate Professional Association president, and I was the global alliance committee 10 years ago. Even I look young, but actually it's not. I'm not young. And I have been actively participate those organization because I would like to spread out my networks with people. Try to get to know more new people that you don't know, and try to understand those culture that you never touched before, and that will really help you to grow your business. Maybe that will be that in maybe 2 years, 3 years, but there will be a good return. Thank you.
All right, Paul. So the question is it difficult to get a visa for the U.S.? I guess, how difficult is it to get a visa for the U.S.?
Well, we had learned earlier that there are 2 types of visas, if you could think about it, right? There is the non-immigrant visa and the immigrant visa. And the reason why, a lot of times, I think with anything, we have to learn the vernacular. We have to learn the words. So as soon as in your mind, you can bifurcate, okay, are they coming here for a little bit of time, or are they coming here for a long period of time? Under Trump, it has been difficult overall. I mean, we have to face the reality that immigration in general, whether it's the non-immigrant context or the immigrant context, is going to be very different. What I say under Obama was loosey-goosey? No, it wasn't. But I would say that it's become very strict now. What's ended up happening with immigration is, at least with my experience, and I think with most attorneys that work in the business context, is there's the consulate in China or around the world, and they have autonomy to do whatever they want, meaning that it's very difficult to appeal their decision. And then you have USCIS, which is here in America, making decisions, and sometimes they conflict. Sometimes they conflict, and there's really no way to appeal. Now, why is that important to you? Because you're going to be working with a client. Like I have a client. He lives at Newport Coast. His home is $15 million. He does extremely well in China, extremely well here in the United States, and he's purchased all this property. And then he went back over to China, and then they actually took out his B1, B2, and they essentially said that they believe that he has immigrant intention. Because when you're a non-immigrant, you're not supposed to have any intent to stay in America. But when you begin to buy property, when you begin to have businesses, well, the problem is you do have immigrant intent. And so the question for me is it difficult to get it? Yes, it's difficult to get, whether it's a non-immigrant or an immigrant visa. I would say that what I worry about is right now the clients are also hesitating to come to America because they don't know, whether their non-immigrant visa, their B1, B2 is going to get pulled at any time. And I mean, this guy he's like 30 years old. He is so wealthy that he was actually able to get the analysis and I don't know how he got it. I've never seen it before. But he was actually able to get the analysis, handwritten analysis of the immigration officer to be able to know that essentially, why he was being denied. So I almost got a backstage look. I was like, oh, wow, this is incredible. And actually they have these categories to be able to check the box. And the immigration officer at the consulate said that he had immigrant intent, which is shocking, because I'd never seen that. I'd always, you hear about it, but you don't really know. And so, that's something that we have to be aware of. It is more difficult. Timelines are extended. And again, the reliance on foreign money that we have to be careful of, I just don't think that you should be doing it. There's got to be other ways. And there are other ways. You guys have been doing a great job. But what I'm trying to say is that, if we think that we're going to rely on the money coming particularly from China and all cash offers, I just think that until the trade war is over, until there's new laws in place, what's essentially happened with the Chinese people is the only way that they can be able to bring their money over are several ways. One, their money is already outside of the country, right? It's been outside the country for one reason or another. Two, is they do business and they've been doing importing and exporting, so they're allowed, it's almost like a license, they can be able to take out their money. Three, is that they give somebody RMB, and here in America, there's a business here that will give them the money. And you're bordering, the client is bordering on, what is that? 洗钱是什么? Money laundering, because it's not reported, but it's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. Recently there was like, those baby, when like people come over and they have babies, they have the baby homes. Actually, every community has that. I don't know if you know that. It doesn't matter what community, whether you're Jewish, Korean, whether you're African American, they have these baby places everywhere. But why did Chinese people get caught? The Chinese people got caught for two reasons. One is it was immigration fraud because they were defrauding the immigration officer by basically saying they were coming to Disneyland, right? But they weren't, so that's immigration fraud. Because the immigration officer asks you, hey, why are you coming to Disneyland? They're like, oh, yeah, I mean, why are you coming to America? They're like, oh, I want to go to Disneyland. They say, well, why don't you go to Disneyland in Shanghai? And they say, oh, because it's not as good as America, and they come here and have a baby. That's immigration fraud. And two is that they were not reporting their taxes, so they were wiring their money out. Actually, I have plenty of clients that go right up to the immigration officer, and they say, why are you coming to America? And they said, oh, I'm pregnant. I'm coming to America to have a baby. That's not illegal. Perfectly legal. There's no law against that. There is no law against being honest to an immigration officer. I mean, you know, if you're honest, they actually allow you to come. It's when you're defrauding the immigration officer and you say that you have a different intent, and then you come here and you have a baby, and then you basically get the papers and you don't pay for any of the medical bills, and then you apply for Medi-Cal, which was what a lot of Chinese people were doing because they were told that it was free to have a baby in America, then you leave and you bounce. Of course, that's fraud. Anyway, it's long-winded, but I just wanted to kind of impart on you all of this information so you kind of know where the tone and tenor of the U.S. government is. Yeah.
All right, buddy. In regard to foreign loan, what specific documents are required?
Okay, so and every lender does it differently, so I'm just going to speak on how HSBC does it. So very similar to you or I getting a loan. So the documents that we're looking for, first we do is an international credit report. So we're verifying some of the debts that they have either in the U.S. or overseas. We get their bank statements. So we translate bank statements from their home country. Let's say, for example, they're from Korea. We would, in their money's in Korea, we would get their Korean bank statements, translate that into the U.S. So that we can see how much they have in assets. And then from an employment standpoint, if they own a company, what we do is we get a letter from their CPA that explains how much money they've earned over the last 2 years so that we can see what type of income and what type of loan they qualify. If they work for a company overseas, we would get a verification of employment from that company verifying their work over the last 2 years. So I've seen other places do it a little bit differently, meaning sometimes you may need the home country tax returns. HSBC, we don't ask for that. But I mean, essentially, the same things that you would ask from your U.S. customer in order to get a loan is what we ask for from our international customers.
All right, and you spoke a little bit about international credit reports. Do most countries have those?
So, no. Canada does, the U.S. does. But when you look at internationally, what we do is we get it from a third-party vendor. So our third-party vendor goes out and confirms some of these relationships that they may have. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a decision on their credit worthiness, right? So in the U.S., we have a FICO score. You have a 700, you have a 600, you have a 500. Depending on that score, a lot of bank institutions decide on how much money we can lend. With our international credit report, what we do is we use a third-party vendor that verifies different things such as depository relationships, international credit cards, and how you pay on those so that we can make a credit decision. And ironically, what we find at HSBC is our international customers actually pay a lot better than our domestic customers. Over the last 7 years, we've had a total of 2 loans go delinquent. And we do quite a few international loans. And the 2 that went delinquent were because, they had the money, they set it up on automatic deposit, and they just didn't move money to their bank account that it was getting pulled from. So once we figured that out, we let them know, we got a hold of them, and we were able to fix the situation. So just a little bit of an ironic story there.
All right. John, you spoke a little bit about your experience with foreign buyers. Can you tell us where you find your buyers? Sure. And also a little bit about, if you think foreign buyers prefer dealing with agents that speak the same language.
Okay. First of all, how many of you have written any articles about real estate and been published to the newspaper? Yes.
Well, it really didn't deal with international. It was being one of our offices,
Oh, okay. Okay. The reason I'm asking is because this is my experience, that why the foreign buyer will trust you. I mean, think about that if you're buying a real estate in Afghanistan and you try to find someone to help you there and you know nothing about that country, but I mean, will you be afraid of that your money may go somewhere else, but you never get the title? It's possible. So it's really doesn't, it's not the matter of how you can prove you are a good salesperson, but you have to let them know you are the person that you can be trusted. So, I mean, for the foreign buyer, you got to think about their insecure mind when they are purchasing something with that large amount of money overseas, and they never have an experience, they don't know the culture, they even don't know the language here. And you got to let them know, yes, this is a very translucent process, and we will guide you and get you a property in a safe way. So I think this is the key one. And second, how you can gain their trust. That, as I mentioned, that if you have any articles that you're writing about the real estate and you've been published in the newspaper, that's great. But if not, that's fine. Because today, who reads newspaper? No, I don't think so. Everyone just read the news feed from the internet. You can be your own blogger. And how many of you have Facebook account? Every one of here, right? So I usually write something. It could be like bilinguals, but when you write something that you share on your Facebook, and also some group of people, they may be interested in buying the property in your territory, in your area, then it is not immediate response, but people read, people remembers, and people buys. So this is one good way that you can tell people that you know something about the real estate here, and you can help people better. But you have to remember, if you write some article like this, you have to be really, make sure the numbers, the information is accurate, is legal, and don't put your numbers, your emails, at the end of the article. That will ruin whole article. Try not to make the things too commercial. You try to share the knowledge, and people remembers you, they will have a way to find you. And second, about the language. Is the language important? Yes. If you want to buy a property in Korea and you don't speak Korean, how you want to deal with that, and all the papers, the language is in Korean. I don't know even one word. But that's why it's important that you have you don't do something that you're not really familiar with. I have an experience that I spoke to a lead, is a prospective client who is from Germany. So I said, oh, guten Tag, freue mich. Ich heiße John Wu. Ich habe Österreich 2 Jahre gewohnt. I said, I just tried to, show off a little bit. I know some German. And that guy just say, you have been living in Austria for 2 years, but do you speak good German? And I said, well, it's just like elementary level. Then he said, well, if you speak to German, you better speak good German. Then he hung up. It's not a bad thing. I mean, this is some culture things. They just want to go straight forward to you. They want to do the business, but they don't want to, social with you. This is not their style. So they would like to give you their conclusion without any, excuse. They just give you an answer saying, this is not my type. But for the Asian people, well, actually, I don't think they will have those kind of things. I mean, they would like to get more peace of mind. If you speak their language, that's great. But if if you don't, you find someone who speaks your, the language. You can team up with the realtor that speak that language and help them. It doesn't affect your, because when we talk about Chinese buyer, for example, we are not talking about the buyers from mainland China. We are talking about the Chinese buyer from all over the world. Singaporean, Malaysian, Cambodian. we have a lot of, Chinese ethnic everywhere. So we are talking about those buyers too. So how you can deal with these people? Get someone who can just give them a peace of mind, give them a language support, but you still can do your business, helping them to get a home here, because this is always their second home. So I would say, don't lose the power of using the internet, and don't rely on a Google Translator. I mean, that makes a lot of bad things in your transaction. Okay, thank you.
All right, Paul, we talked a little bit about EB1 and EB5 visas. Let's say someone's coming to the States not to work but to invest in property. What would be the most appropriate visa for them to get?
Well, in terms of just having them come to America, you can be able to have you could be a non-immigrant or an immigrant. Obviously, if you're in the immigrant category, it's easier to explain if they're audited by USCIS. But, technically, well, at least from my position, America is very good about foreign investment, allowing you to purchase real estate. I know that unless you get it's harder. Earlier I think Buddy was talking about, loans. At least for my clients that come here, they either do hard money, either a hard money loan, or they are just going to put all cash on a property. So, from my standpoint, it really doesn't matter what category they are. You just need to make sure that you report correctly. If you stay over 180 days in the United States, you need to report all of your earnings. Although my understanding, I'm not a CPA, is that it's just for U.S.-based holdings, but U.S.-based income. But I just have them report. I just tell them to report as much as possible. That's my view. And what John was saying, I was laughing. I was thinking about Google Translate because I don't know how to read and write Chinese. I speak Chinese probably like a junior high level. And then legal terms, obviously, I could speak. I remember I was arguing with my mom, and she was so mad at me, and I was like, Mom, stop being upset. But Google Translate basically said, stop being crazy. But the crazy wasn't crazy like we say, like, hey, don't be crazy. It was just like, 不要神经病, like 不要神经病 was like, man, my mom said she's never going to talk to me again. I was really stunned, and I sent it to my older brother. I'm like, hey, what's going on, And my brother, he was like, why are you writing this stuff? It was due to Google Translate. So Google Translate doesn't always translate correctly, and sometimes it translates from an affirmative to a negative, where it'll translate me and it'll say you. So it's actually kind of different. But that's my position in terms of the non-immigrant and the immigrant. I did want to say, piggyback on what John was saying, was that I do feel that it's great to write articles. Earlier someone talked about the first green. Let's see, she had said it was green real estate. That's what I have written down. First building, and I know that at least in Pasadena, all the Class A buildings that we're in, they have to have this compliance, and you have a lot of real estate buyers that come here, and as they have a lot of money. They're able to buy it, but they can't enter into that stratosphere, into that atmosphere of those type of properties, because they don't understand the regulations that occur. And so if you're able to get that translated, or even marketed, I think it's really great. One company that you want to consider, which we use in Alhambra, it's called Asian Link, and their translation is very, very cheap. If it's, we use it for court certified, but they have non-court certified. I understand that you're kind of wading into a very difficult areas, because if you don't have somebody that can read it, because it's not going to be translated like 100%, but they translate pretty close, and they're really, really inexpensive. And then you can give it to John to have him proofread. The president of Taiwan spoke Mandarin, Cantonese, English. He should run, but he doesn't want to run.
Well, I will offer a discount.
See, that's how a politician is. He doesn't want to talk about running for office. But okay, all right.
Buddy, we talked a little bit about countries that have international credit reports. What documents are needed for countries that don't have international credit reports?
We would look at it the same way. So we're going to validate some of the outstanding debt that they have, how they pay that, or if they're in good standing. That could be, cell phone bill. That could be rents. It could be mortgage if they own a home. From a credit perspective, what we're trying to do is just validate that this is a borrower that plans on paying us back. So inside or outside.
All right, then, and can you guys finance property overseas?
We cannot, my division, right? So as I mentioned before, HSBC does business in 123 countries. So that's going to be dependent on the country. Some countries don't let you actually buy property, right? So really you would need to go to that home country and check with the institutions there, and you may, and depending on what their rules and laws are, if international buyers can buy there. So my team doesn't do it. If you run into that situation, you can reach out to me and I can see if I can put you in connection with someone, depending on what country it is, and we can kind of go from there.
Excellent. All right, John, finishing up with question 4. Why do you think your buyers are buying in the U.S., and what's the typical profile of your global buyer?
Okay. I think Paul mentioned about that too. I mean, the United States is a great place to live in, but also, for investment-wise, the people they trust that the U.S. is a better place to park their money. I mean, the income is not really aggressive in the United States compared with many Asian countries right now. It could be like easily 45, 50%, returns on the, every transaction. They just flip the property or just buy and sell within few months. They can make a big bucks. But that contains risks. But the United States here, I mean, for the realtor system, we have more than 100 years history. So it's, with all the efforts being put in the international society, I think NAR has a very good reputation global-wide. So people, they really trust if they purchase the property here, we will follow the code of ethics. We won't really cheat them or try to make some money in the middle, but they don't aware of. So our procedure of transaction is very translucent procedure, and they can see every single steps that we are not, we make something that we deserve it, but we are not over making that money, illegally. So that is a very good, model of the, the real estate market. But also for personal reason that most people try to buy here because they feel the environment is better air, more greens, and of course they may have intention have their kids live here and study in a excellent school district. And most of my clients, they're doctor, from overseas, doctors, professors, artists, especially in Asia, it's kind of humid. So the artists, they try to write some, they draw the great pictures, but they need a special facility to keep that dry. But here, I mean, in Los Angeles area, they don't really need those kind of facility to maintain their artwork. So there are some special needs from the overseas, but it's hard to, it's hard for them to explain why they want to buy it here when that is a special need. So I'm looking for the wine cellar too. I mean, this is a great place to store the wine. So yeah, that is pretty much about this.
Well, this may be a kind of a loaded question for you, John. Sure. But what type of difficulties have you experienced with foreign buyers due to cultural differences?
Oh my God. Okay. First of all, they don't really speak the language, then they don't know how to buy and sell the real estate here. But some of the foreign buyers, they're very conservative, and they will try to guide you how to do it. They don't really listen to you. They think they know much better than you do. So that is another, that is nothing about the, that could be personality, but it's their ego. Because I don't know the thing, so I have to pretend I know So don't try to cheat on me. This is something with when the culture gap happening and you haven't gained the trust from them yet. But from my experience, that when you have some, if your reputation has been hurt or been, the clients, they know about your reputation from the third party, that is different. So that's why I said referral is really the key for the global business. I think that the culture difference, something like I had an experience that a family here, but I know the younger person is the key decision maker. Can you try to ignore the elder people? No, you got to please the elder people, because in some of the Asian culture, the elders is expected to be respected. And you should really respect the elders people. That means you're giving the face to the young people who is making the decision. So sometimes that we will just focus on who has the money in the pocket, but actually not. You have to focus on everything. But here that we will just, when we see the kids, we will just talk more to the kids than to the elders. But in Asia culture, that is different. You got to do that another way. So remember that don't ignore any family members when you don't, especially when you don't know if that family member is someone that will affect the decision maker to make the decision.
Great. Paul, how does the U.S. government look at a U.S. citizen becoming a resident or a dual citizen in a foreign country? And if you could talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, so dual citizenship, as much as there are
Dual citizenship, as much as there are laws against it, I'm sure you've seen Angelina Jolie as a dual citizen. The Pirates of the Caribbean guy is a dual citizen. I'll know his name, but dual citizenship is not an issue, at least an enforceable issue with the U.S. government right now. So you can be citizens of, anywhere you want to be. I don't know any North Koreans that are dual citizens, so I don't know if it's like completely against the U.S. regulations, if it's kind of like that. But I do know Iranians that are dual citizenship, that are dual citizens that have no problem. So, and I know the U.S. has, a big problem with that country. What was your second question?
Well, that was only one so far.
Oh, okay.
Oh, what the pros and cons? So
Of
like the United States has dual taxation abroad.
Yeah, so, again, I'm not a CPA person, but we've actually had clients that have been audited because of that issue. From an business immigration context, I would say this. When people first come to the United States, either on a non-immigrant, I don't mean to be so expressive, I just want you guys to remember this after the meeting, so this non-immigrant or immigrant way of coming to America is that many of them initially have fake documentation to come. They have fake documentation to get out of the country. So most of the people that come here to the United States have at one time or another, in my opinion, faked their docs, right? And why is that important for you to understand is if they don't keep their documentation, many of them don't. So let's say that someone's in China, and John's right, there are Chinese people everywhere, but everybody's most interested in the Chinese people from China because they seem very raw, very new. Some of them listen really well, some of them don't listen really well, but they definitely have money to spend, right? Where the Chinese people from other countries, you kind of know them if they're from Singapore, if they're from Hong Kong, it's different. But yeah, what was I talking about?
The pros and cons of being a foreigner in another country.
Oh, no. In terms of the auditing, here's the problem. They have faked their documentation. So let's say that someone from China, their goal is to come to America. The best way to come to America is not to apply to just come to America. It's for them to have traveled to Korea, they go down to Africa, they take many trips over to, Thailand, Indonesia, things like that, maybe even into Europe. Well, the first time they come out, any country is very worried about them coming out. So they give a big stack of documentation. And what ends up happening is that stack of documentation that they continue to give, and finally they give to the U.S. consulate. The U.S. consulate doesn't share immigration documentation with other consulates. That documentation is frequently lost. Why? Because of the fact that it was fake. The company that prepared it does not keep a copy. There's like maybe 15 or 20 popular ones outside of each consulate. And if your client doesn't keep that documentation, then they reapply here in the United States. And all USCIS does is, you said that you were married and you were a president of a company and you make $1 million a year. And then here, you're married to somebody else, and you're a student, you have no working experience. I mean, it's that different. So my goal isn't to promote a fraud. I'm just letting you know that's where I see fraud occurring, is that they constantly get caught on that issue. And so just tell your client just to keep their immigration docs. I know that sounds so stupid and sounds so simplistic, but many times the thought of wanting to stay in America occurs maybe 2 to 3 or 4 years later after they come to America and they experience the American life, and they're like, this is so wonderful. Because you have to understand, most Chinese people, when they arrive to America, they think it's farmland. LA is considered farmland. I don't know, respectfully, it's considered farmland. They land and they go, oh my God, I'm going back to where my family used to be, at the farm. They walk into downtown LA and they're like, this is terrible. So, but then America becomes the best place in the world. Why? Because we have freedom, right? It's transparent. Things are so wonderful. And after 2 years, the weather from day one, after 2 years, they realize, America is the best place in the world, and begin to speak English. Well, they lose their immigration docs, and they begin to apply. And the next thing you know, they get rejected. So that's what I see. Constant auditing. Taxes, I've seen it, but in the context of the illegal reporting of what they've done, that's where my standpoint is where they get caught. They are always faking it, right? And in Asia, it happens a lot. There's a lot of faking of documentation, so they kind of get used to it, and they think that's kind of the normal way of getting things done. And so, that's where we're at.
Excellent. That leads us to the next question. This is both for Buddy and Paul. As agents, real estate agents, what's the best way to protect us from being defrauded from foreign nationals? Especially in the last 10 years, a lot of cash is coming in from China and Hong Kong, and I know they've slowed that down a little bit. But Buddy, what's the best way to kind of protect yourself?
Well, I would say it's the team that you keep, right? So just like you have a partner that may do your FHA business or your jumbo business, I think you should have a team that you're working with that is kind of vetting the customer all at the same time, right? So if you have a loan officer that is experienced in doing international business, you should use that loan officer. If you have a title or escrow company that is used to doing international business, you should use that title and escrow company. And if you don't have that, and you want to do international business, you need to go out and find it. So when you're all working together, and there's a red flag raised, then act on it, right? So act on it. Have a team of support that you're working with that's going to protect you against someone defrauding you, or, on the flip side of it, defrauding the customer, right? So if a customer comes over and they have a hard money lender that's charging them 12%, that's not okay, right? So make sure that you have a team, and I'm not saying, tell them they can't use someone, right? We don't want to violate RESPA laws, but have a team of experts that handle the business that you want to handle so that you can have success for your customer's transaction.
All right, Paul.
The big issue, not with real estate agents, but you always have to think about it, is the source of funds issue. The source of funds issue in immigration consistently creates problems for attorneys. But that's not necessarily in answer to your question, but I'm just letting you know I wanted to talk about source of funds really quick. You just have to remember they need to be able to source their funds. In my opinion, if they could originate back to how they got their money. Banks in China didn't start becoming regulated until about the year 2000. So a lot of the money is from the 1990s and 80s that they've been collecting. It's very difficult for us to get that information. We just only get declarations from people that just say, yes, I gave this money to this person. But banking, it's not, we don't have that much. So I just want to alert you of that. In my opinion, at least from the real estate context, you have to be careful because typically Asian people or Chinese people in particular from mainland China that have come over, there are a lot of attorneys now that are really capitalizing on the fact that they feel really cheated. So this is kind of a new trend where Chinese people are now plaintiff side and they're starting to sue a lot of real estate agents and brokers. So, really never act outside of the scope of what you've been retained to do, because they'll say that, you gave them legal advice. They'll make a lot of claims, and I have to defend a lot of these type of claims. Another thing I want to warn you guys about is a lot of times when they're selling property, they don't want you to disclose defects, and I want to remind you that, not just in the AVID where you're doing the agent visual inspection, but if you do know of a defect and you do not disclose it, that is a basis of liability. And I actually am defending a case on that where the agent is essentially claiming that they were instructed as the agent to act in that way and they shouldn't be liable. But there is independent liability, and I'm trying to explain this to the agent that there's independent liability apart from the seller of property, so that when they tell you don't disclose it, it may be okay where they're from, but here legally that's going to cause a lot of problems for you. And I do notice, for some odd reason, we've had a whole rush of cases from 2017 and 2018 actions where your broker has not carried their E&O. I know that you trust your broker to do it, but I think you guys got to double check, because just in the last, this year in 2018, we had 5 cases of very legitimate big brokerages that their E&O had lapsed. Nobody knew because everybody was just kind of doing their own thing. So I want to warn you guys of that. And the agent then wasn't covered because the agent didn't have independent E&O. So I just want to share that with you. Hopefully I kind of answered your question, but I just, one of the things that we didn't talk about is kind of my litigation experience. So I want to kind of give you some scary stories because, now the agent and the broker are going to be out at least $100,000, $200,000 in attorney fees. So, please check with your, check with your broker. If he says, yes, I have say, hey, can I be able to see it? I know it sounds bad, but can I be able to see it? I was just at a lecture. I just want to make sure we have the right coverage. You can be able to see it that way, right? And then because, if 5%, if 95% of you have no problem, you think I'm crazy, great. But if there's a 5% and it accidentally lapsed, you're going to be so happy, that we actually talked about this, because I'm having too many lawsuits of lapse coverages on big brokerages. It's bizarre.
John, I know a lot of your experiences in Asia. Can you talk a little bit about other hot markets that you might know where current Americans are buying overseas?
Well, sure. So have you heard about the Wanda Group? Wanda Group. It's from Dalian, China. That they have a big development in Beverly Hills. And have you heard about Greenland Realty? Greenland USA, right? That is also another huge, real estate firms from Shanghai, China. And those companies, they're having big projects in downtown Los Angeles next to the Staples Center. And of course, recently they may have some issues with the money things, I guess. But look at the trend. I mean, those companies are not just invest in Los Angeles, but also in New York, in London, in Germany too. But when we talk about the hot spot, look at that way. Some people, they may be more conservative, so they choose to buy the property in the United States. But most of the people, they try to pursue the more aggressive returns. So there are several hotspots overseas right now. For example, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Those places that we may call, they are so far they're undeveloped. They're developing countries right now, but they have lower labor cost, and they have a lower property price too. And especially, they don't really have a very good taxation law there. So what that means, if there's no, a very strong framework of taxations for that country, that means that you will have some gray area, that you may gain more from the gain area, the gray area. The reason I would just say that country, those three countries are hotspot right now, because I noticed that the money, the money is not wiring in the United States because they have more regulations. But some of the money in Taiwan, Hong Kong, they're moving their money to those countries. I remember that in 2006, 2007, there are several China developers. They try to sell their real estate retail shopping centers to the U.S. customer. And the slogan is, we guarantee we'll buy back everything you pay in next 3 years. And we guarantee you, disregard that we got the space leased, you will get 8% return annually. But that is not happening again. I mean, because the real estate in China actually is like a little bit bubbling so far. The market is not doing good there. But the money is moving to the East Asia, especially we call the RCEP countries. RCEP is the Regional Economic Comprehensive Partnership. This is it consists 16 countries that they have like a FTA styles. Those 16 countries, they reduce their tariff to each other, so they have more trades in between. And that actually trigger the real estate market is getting higher. And now they are now promoting the high return and guarantee buyback policy in those countries too. So that means that will be the next money hotspot. And I would say, I mean, higher risk, you definitely you deserve the higher return. But most people, if they are pursuing for a better place to live, they will still choose here.
Oh, and a follow-up question. Of those countries or any other countries, are you aware of those countries where you can purchase property and apply for dual citizenship? And what might be the criteria? And chime in on this when you're done.
Yeah. Actually, there are many countries, they offer the permanent residencies if you purchase a real estate there. For example, in Europe, Spain, they have a policy. They have a new policy that called a Golden Visa program. The Golden Visa program allows people who, invest $500,000 and purchase the real estate property, then you will get a PR. Then you stay there a period of time that you can become the citizens. But also, for example, in New Zealand, if you spend like a $750,000 in government bonds, then you will be qualified to apply for the permanent residence too. There's another one we call the second. Actually, Malaysia. Malaysia, they have a program that called Malaysia's My Second Home. It's MM2H. That is a program that allows people to buy properties there. If you have reached a certain amount of investment, then you will be eligible to become a resident, then a citizen too. So those are some countries. They are pretty, aggressive on, attracting the money coming into to their country too. But to add on something about the culture difference aware of, I mean, because you just mentioned both Paul and Buddy mentioned about the long things. When your clients telling you, the foreign customer from Asia, they tell you, I have the money, no problem. Do you think that is no problem? No, that is a big problem. And no matter how you work hard to gain their trust, and they trust you 98%, but believe me, that husband's still hiding the money from wife. Why do you think they will just disclose every single penny to you? So that really creates some problem when we apply for loan. When loan officer needs some documents and the proof of funds, they do have funds, but they never tell you that it's on the ceiling or somewhere. They will try to hide the money, and they try to, little by little, just give you some information. Okay, you need, but I still try to hold most of the information, which is so important. They don't want to let you know their financial background because they don't feel secure. Even they trust you, they still don't feel secure on that way. So when you're dealing with the international buyer, if they say no problem, please tell them that if there's no problem, there will be a big problem in the future, and you end up with no deal, in the transaction.
Okay, Paul, do you have any experience with buyers buying overseas to get dual citizenship?
Yes, but I'm not involved in it. So, we get clients all the time. Two of the clients I represented, John just spoke on, Wanda and Greenland. They're multinational, international clients. They have many different issues and concerns and things like that. So I'm not involved in that aspect. But the answer is yes. As you grow, they diversify. They look for other avenues. But John's really always ahead of the curve. You really have to look at those three countries. The Chinese clients I had already been looking at those countries around 5 years ago because of the cost of doing business. And in America right now, there's a lot of jobs that are going over to Texas. One of my clients, Lollicup, went over there. Lollicup, everybody likes to eat boba. He shipped all of his jobs over there because of that. So we see kind of a vacuum that's occurring in terms of California being too employee friendly to a point where it's gotten where many of our clients have wanted to leave. Sriracha, you guys like sriracha? Sriracha's, one of my clients, Hoi Fong Foods. They were threatening to leave Irwindale. They say, we don't want to stay here anymore. We don't want to be in California. It's so tough here. And so we have this move out of state. So it's kind of a double whammy. We have a lot of large companies, not just Asian, a lot of legitimate companies that are wanting to leave or don't want to come to California. And then we also have a foreign dependence. We have a dependence on foreign money, particularly in the San Gabriel Valley area and Orange County area, that has caused a lot of damage. But to answer your question, I'm not involved in the multinational part of the purchasing or acquiring of dual citizenships.
All right, as an attorney, Paul, you're probably pretty conservative. Let's say a realtor or one of us wanted to get in business with a person overseas. What information should we gather, and what type of action should you take to protect yourself as much as possible?
Yeah, you have to understand that failed deals overseas, failed deals are a part of life, and there's no mechanism by which a failed deal gets to get adjudicated. So I just want you to know, for example, let's say a real estate transaction goes bad. People don't go to court. They just don't. They hopefully find somebody that has a relationship with someone else to try to finish things off or to try to resolve it. Now, why is that important to you? It's important to you because we take the standard of you have to keep your word. They take the standard many times of keeping your word isn't part of the deal. It's part of the negotiation. And so you'll actually get people that the deal will break down intentionally, and you'll be like, hey, what's going on? Like, you represent the seller. The seller says, oh, I don't want to sell anymore. Just don't want to do it. 6 months later, they sold it just for like $100,000 more or $500,000 more. That's actually very natural. So as a real estate broker and agent, my thought is that you really have to not trust the words of your client. Respectfully, don't trust the words of your client. You have to have everything written down. Many times the clients, if they're on the buyer side, they'll make you drive them around for, all over the place. And then next thing you know, you took them to a location, and then they go with a different agent, and then the transaction goes through. You say, hey, wait a minute, I just took you there a week ago. They don't consider that to be bad, and they don't consider that to be unethical. And so you really have to lock them down. I remember I went over to Vegas. I was looking at different properties for clients because they wanted to acquire, and the agent specifically said they had an agreement. It wasn't necessarily an agreement that I'd ever seen, but it was basically, if I take you to a property, you are not able to acquire this property from any other agent. And I had to talk to my client and say, hey, look, you're going to sign this. And so I want you to know that other places are doing it. It's not shameful for you to do it. Sometimes you have to be a little bit different than what you're taught, because in America, that's a great thing, is if you look at someone's eye and you shake your hand, you better, keep that deal. Well, that doesn't necessarily happen with other cultures, so you got to get everything written down. So that would be my recommendation for you. Otherwise, for those of you that are not Asian, or for those of you that want to kind of engage with the Chinese community, you're going to get burned, and you're going to feel really bitter, because you're going to be like, man, but that's not, you need to understand where they're coming from. Is they don't feel that's a bad thing. So get everything down, get everything documented, and want to lastly say, you can be able to sue for your fees. Don't want you to think that that's illegal or wrong. And when you sue for your fees, you actually get your attorney fees. There are many attorneys that will take on your cases on a contingency to be able to take your fees. All right?
I know a really good attorney that can do that.
Okay.
So finally, for Buddy, we heard some fascinating information today from both John and Paul. What's your biggest takeaway?
Well, I guess in closing, my closing comments would be find a team, right? So find a loan officer that can help you from an international standpoint of what you want to portray to your clients, right? So they should be an expert in what they're doing, so that they support you versus bring you down, right? So, just like you might have someone who does your jumbo business or someone that does your FHA or VA business, you should, if you really want to get serious about doing international business, I would say find someone that can help you from an international standpoint that props you up versus tear you down. And then I would also say look into CIPS.
Well, thank you. Well, I think teamwork is really important, because when you have a client but you don't have good team members, it won't make a deal anyway. So actually, I have been experienced from like a failure of the foreign loan. I mean, because I didn't know Buddy before. But look at that. I mean, do you think that all the foreign buyer will be like a cash buyer? Maybe in 2007, and when we have the crisis, yes, I got phone calls from North Dakota, and the agent found me from the LA Times that interviewed me about the Chinese buyer coming to the United States, and they said, can you take those clients to North Dakota? I have huge land for sale, and it's so cheap. But we got to find out why they want to buy the lands there, not because they're cheap, but their future return. But those cash buyer, they're not really happen, frequently as before. So that's why we need a loan officer to do the loan part, and also make sure that your clients, make sure your clients know you before know Paul, because Paul is attorney. No, I'm just kidding. No, well, actually, we need a Paul because you need some legal advice when you're dealing with the foreign buyers too. I mean, they may ask you some questions that you probably cannot answer, but they don't understand why you cannot answer it. You're my realtor. No, I mean, even we are in the same culture, we have the similar backgrounds. It doesn't mean that we can violate something that regulate us, like a code of ethics. We still need to follow the codes here, and we still try to refer to the professions that not in our field. So I think the team member is a must. Thank you.
Right, before we finish with Paul, is there any questions you guys have for our speakers today? Ben showed up. He's going to help us.
Thanks, Ben. Question regarding, we talked about, or you guys talked about political pressures in regards to immigrant versus non-immigrant status and how it's being, crack down upon as far as tightening up. What about international monetary policy, and maybe what your biggest fears are and how that could affect the real estate market here? And I'll leave it to anybody there.
Well, I mean, from a lending perspective, I mean, I'll do my best to answer this. I mean, some of it's opinion. But currency policy changes everything, right? So, I mean, how the dollar moves changes how much someone can afford, right? I mean, we run into doing a loan, right? So if I'm doing a loan for someone from the UK and the pound goes down 25 cents, now they don't have, I mean, we do everything in USD, right? We do everything in dollars. So, I mean, that can affect the transaction, right? So you have to be aware of it. I mean, the biggest currency issue that I see right now is with I mean, it's been ongoing, but even more intensified with the China trade war, and being able to get money over from China to the U.S., doing it the right way or doing it a legal way, because it's actually illegal to use the RMB to buy property in a foreign country. So, I mean, those are the things that I wouldn't say keep me up at night, but those are the things that we have to take in consideration when we're looking at, you know, international from a lending perspective.
Well, about I think exchange rate sometimes will become a very key issues for the international transaction. I mean, for example, I you know, in CR that I also, you know, I have given the same example. In 2001, the RMB rate is every $1 equal to 6 RMB. So that means at that time, the people from China, they spent, no, I'm sorry, $1 equal to 8 RMB. So they need to spend $8 million to buy $1 million US dollars property. But in 2007, the rate has changed. It has changed to $1 to 6 RMB. So that means they only need to spend 6 million RMB, their money, and they can acquire a 1 million US dollars property here. And what about if the 1 million property has dropped because of the crisis and dropped 25%? So they're making a good deal. So look at that way, that we had so many Chinese buyers at that time. And now, where is those Chinese sellers? I mean, if they sell the property at this time, the currency rate has changed again. And if they sell the property now, every $1, I believe it's 1 to 7. So 1 million, if they sell the property for 1 million, they can just wire back 7 million RMB. They make money. They may not get that much right now because the market is slowing a little bit, but they still can gain a lot from the exchange rate. So I think that is another key factor.
Yeah, I have friends is in Nanjing. She want to use 1 million cash buy property in USA, but I just cannot find a way to transfer cash to USA. So, do you have some way transfer his money to USA?
I'm not answering that question.
You're not going to answer. I need to consult with Paul before I answer that.
No, I mean, John can answer it.
I can. Well, be honest to you, actually, most the clients, if they are able to transfer money out from China, because they have offshore corporations in Singapore, Hong Kong, or somewhere is not governed by mainland China government. So if your clients doesn't have that ability, I mean, well, just a family, they try to buy something and they try to wire money, you have to tell the government that the purpose of that money. But they have regulated the people. The money that you're wiring out can be a tuition for your kids, but cannot be buying the bonds, stocks, and real estate in the U.S. So that's a key question. I mean, so many people, they try to buy the property, but they are unable to because government doesn't allow them to wire that money for that purpose. So if you have any other reason that why you need that money, and I think that you still can do it. They just not allow you to use that money to buy real estate property here. The money you're wiring out, you can have some reason. For example, you're the trading company, so you need to buy some stock. You need to buy some merchandise from the U.S. You got to pay. So that is it's a reasonable use. They call reasonable use of that money. But if you're wiring that money for the purpose of purchasing real estate property, U.S. stock, or the bonds, no, those are not permitted by China government. Well, I see. Well, then, just wait until the trade war over. Sorry, I cannot answer it because I think that it's very difficult to
people have become very creative. So, for example, one attorney that I met one time, he was getting all of these default judgments against these Chinese companies, and I was like, what's going on? I called him up and he said, oh, they need to wire money over. They have a U.S. judgment. They're a defendant. Then they tell the Chinese government, hey, I have to go pay a U.S. judgment to wire the money over. So people have gotten very creative to try to get money out of the country. I mean, huh? What?
I don't know if I want to be involved.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, that's what was happening, is that that was a legal way for them to get their money out of the country. So what John is trying to say or suggest to you is that if it's not for stocks, bonds, or real estate, that there's a process by which you can legitimately report to the Chinese government that you need to wire money out. And then I also talked about the fact that there are a lot of companies that have already been doing business, and they essentially have a license to be able to take their money out of the country to be able to do business across the world. And so she can associate with that, But then those companies in the middle, they always take a huge percentage, huge cut, maybe 10, 15%. And again, this is not to encourage any type of money laundering. I'm just telling you how people are doing it. Is that essentially if there's a multinational company and it's $1 million and they say, okay, well, we're going to take $200,000 of your money as a fee, right? And then, we'll transfer $800,000 out, and then you'll get it here in America. I don't know, from a bank's perspective, how is the source of funds issue? Because I've had it go both ways. How's the source of funds issue? All right, like if someone walks in, because there are some banks, big banks, my clients have literally walked in with like $5 million, not in cash, obviously. The bank didn't care. And then there are other banks that'd be like, wait, stop. Where is this coming from?
Yeah, U.S. banks, in most cases, we have to source where the funds are, right? So what's the source of wealth? So, as far as we're looking for source of wealth, and if it makes sense, and that's KYC, know your customer, and that's really, a banking rule in all of the U.S. So, source of funds are very, very important. When you're doing a loan standpoint, what we're looking at from a source of funds is we're looking at the last 60 days. But it has to make sense, right? So, if someone's a cook in Taiwan, making $2 million a year, doesn't really make sense, right? So, there's some due diligence that goes into that, but we are looking at a source of funds. We're looking at the last 60 days to see where that money's coming from, essentially. And that, from a standpoint at HSBC, we're seeing if that money's coming from a legality standpoint, because we do business in China, so we're going to make sure that we follow the laws in China as well. So, definitely source of funds from a banking standpoint is important, and money laundering is something we really take seriously.
So there are three, in America, there are three levels of banks, correct me if I'm wrong. You have your community, regional, national, and then you have multinational banks, right, like HSBC. And I've noticed that with a lot of the community banks, they're typically a lot more flexible. And I'm saying this respectfully, but not in a good way. So they because they need the money, they don't have that much money that people have parked, so they're a lot more flexible. But I've noticed that in the flexibility, there's been a lot of problems, because once a client gives like $5 million to $10 million, to a community bank, which could be a lot of money for a community bank, there's been auditing that has occurred with my clients. Now, I'm not the CPA, so I'm not part of that auditing part, but I'm just letting you know that if you are ever looking to park your money, being strict about where the source of funds is coming from is very important. And just parking your money in a community bank isn't necessarily the best move. That's just my opinion, based on my experience. Yeah.
Fred first.
Yeah, what effect will a recession, U.S. recession, have on foreign investment?
Can you say it again? I didn't hear it. The foreign.
Well, what effect will a U.S. recession,
Mm-hmm.
economic recession have on foreign investment?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would say the foreign, the recession, the economy recession. Can you believe that many buyers they're watching our recession now? I mean, they keep their eyes on our economy, grow or getting lower. So I would say that eventually think about that. I mean, when the last crisis happened, has that been 10 years cycle? Yes. So they're counting. Those people, they have money. They are moving the money from the East Asia, not because they are just buying some aggressive real estate property, high return, but also they are waiting for some other opportunities, especially here. The recessions, that means that we may have a higher unemployment rate, for example, or the real estate is not doing so well as we expected. So in the past few years, I know that the bank has done their best to clear the bad debts, try to make the whole system more healthy. So we have lower delinquency rate too. But this time they are looking for a good timing that they can step into the market. I mean, the foreign money is not coming in now not because they are not interested in buying the real estate here, but they are waiting the better timing. And when you mentioned about the recession, that will not be a hot drop like in 2007. But I think that including many of my clients, they are having their money ready to purchase the property, but it's not the time yet. So I would say, yes, the recession, that will trigger more foreign money coming here to buy the real estate.
I wanted to talk about getting money out of China. This was a few years ago when I had clients, they were here applying they were working here on the work visa, and they wanted to buy, and they didn't have a whole lot of money, but they had wealthy relatives in China. And so they worked it somehow, and we worked with the Chinese bank over here, where money came from all different areas of China from different relatives. And I think they were like 50,000 was from each different party. So maybe that, I don't know if that's still doable, but that might help if they have other relatives where, they can wire from different family members into an account here.
Well, 50,000 US dollars is the cap for each individual, the Chinese citizens, per year. They can wire out money for 50,000. But as I mentioned before, you still can wire money out, but you have to declare the purpose of that money. Why you need the money to be wired to the U.S. So we have so many students here that their parents are making money in China. So the kids is not permitted to work here, and they need tuition, they need to pay. So that is a good excuse to get the money wired out. So 50,000. I mean, I'm not a banker, so you have to check with your clients and ask their bank if they still can do it. But that cases that happen a lot because the limit of each person is 50,000. So if you're buying like 500,000, you need to find 10 people. Yeah. So That happens all the time.
Question for Paul. You talked about the EB2 or EB visas, but you really didn't touch on the E2 visa. I do business brokerage
Okay.
and a lot of it, and I know it's a great way for foreigners to get a stake in the United States.
Yeah.
What have you seen change in the last 6 months to a year or throughout the Trump administration of that? Is there a dollar amount they have to invest in a business? Because I've heard mixed reviews on that.
Yeah.
Like you have to minimum of 200,000, minimum there is no minimum. Can you address that?
So what he's talking about is a non-immigrant visa, and for countries that have a relationship with the United States, for example, Taiwan, Australia, good relations, they'll have a contract with the U.S. that essentially say, hey, we need to have our business people come over. That's an E2 visa. So for those countries that don't have the E2, it's not EB. So EB is employment based. That's for the immigrant visa. This is a non-immigrant visa that's going to be under the E2, and they're typically called E1, E2 treaty investors. So it's a treaty that the United States has signed. So what ends up happening is that the equivalent of the E is going to be the L if they don't have a treaty with the United States. Does that make sense? So I talked about the L because most people, if we're talking about China, it's going to be L. But then there are a lot of treaty countries. And, you know, if you can have a foreign investor from a treaty country, I think that's going to be really good. The question is, how much are you going to invest? And so my recommendation has always been that whether it's an L or an E, that you're going to need to justify to the United States the amount of money that you're going to invest. Before, it used to be really low. If someone transferred over $100,000 or $200,000, they could be able to come, whether it's on an L or E. Now, I'm getting clients that are getting rejected even when they invest $500,000. Why? Because they can't justify the amount of money that they're transferring over to America to be able to get a visa. And so earlier I talked about source of funds, and now what I'm talking about is actually presenting a plan to USCIS on the money that's going to be transferred over. So if you're going to be investing into the United States, let's say $400,000, and you're buying into a company that's worth $10 million, or you're saying my company is going to be worth $10 million, that $400,000 may not make any sense to the U.S. government. And they've been auditing that very, very strictly. And so, again, I'm not saying that Obama is bad. Actually, Obama was really good because a lot of money to come over. But Obama, there was a lot more flexibility. Trump, there's a lot less flexibility, and there's a lot of delays. And so I just want to say, in terms of what was your name? What Mike was saying is very, very good, because that's one thing I didn't talk about, is that the E2 context is the equivalent of the L for those countries that already have a relationship. And his question is, for 2019, what do we see? There is no minimum, but the justification to bring over the money is much different now. Now on the L and the E's, we have huge stacks of paperwork. When before it was just like, give us a few weeks. Don't worry about it. You're going to get, you're going to be able to come to America. So now the justification is very, very strict for 2019. It started in 2018, actually.
I have foreigners that come to me and they want to buy a restaurant. They say this for $200,000. So you're saying it's not so easy anymore just to say, okay, I want to buy this restaurant, get the employees.
Yeah. So I'm not a big supporter of the purchasing of restaurants, just because, at least for me, I haven't had huge success with it. But what Mike is saying is, there have been a lot of clients that have been successful, which is businesses that have a low buy-in rate. For example, like a restaurant for $200,000, you buy it for $200,000. The problem is that they should be actually bringing in more than $200,000. So before, if it was $200,000, we would buy it for $200,000, and we would get essentially an E2 or even an L1. But now we can't. We can't. So that's the reason why I've been telling my clients, you're going to buy a restaurant for $200,000. You got to bring in more than $500,000. You have capital overhead, you have TI improvements, you have all of these employees. But before, we didn't have to do that. So that's the reason why I've been really negative on restaurants, because on some restaurants they're basically just letting it go. But yeah, it's become very, very hard. It's become very hard because we've kicked the can too far down the road for too many presidents, and now we're kind of reaping this, all of these things kind of converging together. You know, we have America First policy. We have given away too much money for the last 20, 30 years. We have all of these problems. We've had foreign dependence on money, dependence on foreign money, I'm sorry. And all of these things are just kind of converging all at one time. And so it's becoming very hard. And we have immigration tightening, which typically, if the economy is going down, you want to be more free. You want to have more people come. Now it's like we're making it even tighter. So, you know, everything is kind of converging all at the same time. So, all right.
And I know we have two more questions here and here.
If you have a foreign buyer, would it be just from a liability, personal liability standpoint, just as I say you need to see a tax man, would I say you need to see an immigration man?
Yeah, you should never, you know, here's the thing is that attorneys that are taking on plaintiff side cases, and I've had to defend and I've had to prosecute, right? We're part of the $10 million club because I prosecuted a case for fraud. So I do want to say that you have to consistently write everything down for the client. You know, say that you're not a tax attorney, say that you're not a CPA, say that you're not an attorney. I think that's so critical because when things go awry, attorneys, you know, there are over 200,000 attorneys in California. It's like, you know, it's huge. And so there are so many attorneys that they'll take any case. And so you just have to be very careful. You have to constantly be telling your client and actually be willing to say no.
Would you suggest a consultation with an attorney before anything starts?
No, I don't think that's necessary. No, for you, for your client, I don't think that's necessary. But what I really would suggest the clients is that a lot of the agents, they're really pushed by the client. Like they're really pushed to do things that they shouldn't. You kind of know in your heart something's not right, but you're pushed to do. It's better to say, you know what, I can't answer the question. Please speak with an attorney. Or you could say, my experience is this, but I'm not an attorney. You should see an attorney. So you should always say, my experience is this, even if you know the right answer, because the last thing you want is to have, you know, the unlawful practice of law, unlawful practice of accounting. Yeah.
Question. Hello? Okay. Pretty much the same area that this lady was asking. We are in LA. We have a lot of people from many different countries, and we are approached, you know, that they want to buy a property. I feel uncomfortable that raising the question, what is your immigration status? Watch for whatever, you know, your immigration status is. The guy might have been a citizen for 15 years. What do you suggest to, you know, to deal with that question?
I don't know. You know, I mean, the problem is I came here when I was, you know, 1 year old. I still get asked all the, you know, I still get people telling me all the time, you know, your English is so amazing. You know, I mean, like, where are you from? You know, it's like Pasadena, and they always ask me, no, where are you really from? You know, they always kind of have that follow-up question. So,
Right.
you know, I don't know. But I don't feel offended by it.
I mean, it reminds me of everything that we study in our real estate classes as far as discrimination or being careful, you know, how you're, you know, raising this question, where you're from or what's your status. So that's a line that I've been trying to avoid so far, but from what you say, it scares me now. I mean, I have a client, let's say, from India, right? And they probably are U.S. citizens, and they're buying a property with me. So am I supposed to say, check your immigration status out of nowhere?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, usually we, you know, for that we have a form called affidavit. So affidavit. So that means if you are you are not the U.S. citizen, you're not a permanent resident, then you know, that will end up with some tax consequences, like they have to withhold the 18.33, and that is something different from, you know, if you're not a citizen, if you're not a PR, then that will be something be withheld by the escrow.
That's on the seller side. You're talking about crypto.
Right, the buyer side.
A buyer.
Right, because the buyer, when you talk to buyer, you have to tell them two things. I mean, this is my personal experience, that I would tell them that they are expecting the increase of the property tax, the supplemental bill. But second, how soon you want to sell your property. If you are selling your property, please be aware there will be another withholding from escrow if you're not a U.S. citizen or you're not a permanent resident. But I did not ask them their status, but I just let them know, so far the law, that will be a big difference if you are, because they are always, if the foreigner, they're buying property, they are always buying the secondary home. This is not their primary home anyway.
So your answer is that you raise a different question, hoping that the original question would be raised in the conversation.
Because I have no intention to know his status. But this is my, it could be my, part of my professions. I have to let you know, if you're selling your property in the future, then, for the U.S. citizen status as a primary resident, you may have exemptions, for example. But if you're not, then escrow will hold the money from your transaction. I mean, I did not predict that this guy is going to sell the property sooner or later, but that will be happen in the future. So we are not asking him.
I appreciate it, and that's a good angle, but I want to repeat the question in a very direct way. That
Sure.
If I'm not asking a potential buyer the immigration status, and they run into problem in that transaction, am I liable?
We are not an attorney. The question is that, is there a duty, are you negligent? Is there a duty in your profession to communicate that with them? And I don't necessarily think you have a duty to communicate with them potential tax consequences or those type of consequences. I do want to tell you that what you're learning in California real estate is California UNRUH Act. It's UNRUH, which basically said that, if you're a business, you can't discriminate, things like that. But I don't think a plaintiff is going to sue you if you ask that question, because they have to prove discriminatory animus. You actually have to have the intent to discriminate. So I think that would happen if you were like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, China. You're like, okay, well, thank you very much. You hang up the phone. I mean, that's, I actually think that you're doing the transaction with them. So you don't have discriminatory animus. You just want to make sure that they don't accidentally violate the law. So I don't think that you're violating a law by asking them that question. Now, I've never defended a lawsuit in the real estate context where somebody said, yeah, George did a transaction with me, and he asked me if I was Chinese, and I did the transaction with him, and it was completed, and he discriminated against me. The question is, what discriminatory animus does he have, and how are you damaged? Those are two questions on defense, which I don't think that they can prove.
So one of the things, let's say I do, in my agent due diligence,
Right.
there's others that sometimes I write down that you need to check the city, you have checked the city,
Sure.
all that stuff. So if I put a phrase that if you are not a U.S. citizen, check if you're immigration attorney.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I'm gonna end with this. There's the truth. The truth is here, and attorneys only care about evidence because evidence is the only thing that goes into court. I always tell the client that. So they want to tell me how they explained and everything. So evidence is kind of important because that's the only thing that goes in. Evidence comes in two forms: people and paper. There's only two types of evidence, and so everybody can always twist evidence. So your truth could be, no, I didn't have any type of discriminatory animus, but the evidence shows that you kind of did. So I just want to warn you about that. So there was a lawsuit where there was a person that on the application process, he would write Jew, 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 and he got sued. He got sued for basically writing that. But you know why he wrote it? Is because he was basically saying if he had jeweler experience, but he wrote Jew. Right? So it's kind of scary because what's the truth? The truth is he was trying to sit there and say, wait, no, it was just, I'm a jeweler. I just need to know whether somebody is a jeweler, right? But the evidence showed some type of discriminatory animus. So I just want to warn you, when you write something like that, the truth could be here, but nobody cares about the truth. Attorneys really don't care.
Are we at the point that we need another disclosure from California realtors saying that if you're whatever, what's your immigration status? I mean, we have disclosure for deadlocks,
I don't know if they're going to do it or not, but I mean, you can always make that recommendation.
All right, you guys, it's past 11 o'clock. I think we had a fantastic, awesome. I think Buddy, John, and Paul will be here for a few minutes if you guys want to exchange business cards or have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you. We need to get together. We need to get together, get lunch. Sure. When I'm out there.
Where's your office? Can't be near you.
Oh, thank you.
Coming and doing that.
How are you?